Hello and welcome to this episode of Recitals. We are discussing social issues in depth. This is the episode for November, and the themes we're discussing will be poverty and hunger, education, and prison reforms. Let's discuss Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. This is United Against Poverty and Hunger. Now, this is an alliance that has been formed at the end of the G20 summit recently held in Rio de Janeiro. And this is an effort led by President Lula, the president of Brazil. Brazil is right now heading the G20. Now, G20 has, as you know, 19 countries to it. And there is European Union, which forms the 20th. And recently, African Union has been added to it. And there are several countries which are taken in as observers from time to time. Now, G20 by itself represents 2/3 of the world's population and about 85% of the world's GDP. So whatever the G20 does has massive impact on the world. Now, the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty was officially launched in the summit recently. It was launched in the summit recently under the chairmanship of President President Lula. His full name is Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Popularly, he's called President Lula. Now, as some of you must be aware, the idea was that by 2030, one of the sustainable developmental goals was that completely end poverty and end hunger actually. But we have realized that the world is nowhere close to getting to that target, and all our efforts need to be doubled up. And there's, in fact, a bigger problem. By the year 2050, 58% of the world will be suffering from hunger. So the things are actually looking pretty dire. Now, what the Alliance aims to do is eradicate hunger and poverty by 2030, aligning with the Sustainable Developmental Goals. The objective is to remove all nations from the FAO hunger map by fostering collaboration and resource mobilization. Now, who are the members of this? There are about 148 members, including 82 countries, African Union, European Union, 9 financial institutions, 24 international organizations, and 31 philanthropic and NGOs. Membership is also available to non-G20 countries. So, now what are the objectives of this alliance? Now, the alliance is basically a product of the summit that was held in Rio de Janeiro, led by President Lula. What are the objectives? Now, the objectives are provide sustained political drive at the highest level by the group of 20 and other global actors. What they want to do is, this is going to be led by G20 and other global alliances and build upon the synergies with other existing efforts to eliminate hunger and poverty. This is not going to be entirely new, but this is going to actually act as a coordinating mechanism, which is going to bring in the ideas from several countries, and the countries will be then taking forward these ideas. Now, let us see what are the other objectives. Facilitate mobilization and improved alignment of domestic and international support groups. Then also public and private financial resources, and enable large-scale country-owned and country-led implementation. The idea is that this effort is going to be led by the countries, and this alliance is actually going to have a basket of policies. Now, these policies would have been tried out in some other context, and the other countries can learn from this particular policy and implement it in their own country. Of course, the policy, when it's implemented, will be completely owned by the new country that is going to implement it. The other countries will help them the alliance will help them in trying to figure out how to actually implement this policy, what changes can be made, and more importantly, from where resources can be mobilized for this. Now, what are the membership is going to be open and voluntary participation. Alliance is open to any UN member or observer state, as well as a variety of national, regional, international, finance and knowledge sharing capacity building organizations. Membership in the alliance is formalized through a set of statement of commitment which will be given to each member who wants to become a part of this. Now, this is going to be demand driven, putting country needs first, because the countries actually know what they need. It's going to be based on the focus is going to be bottom up rather than we create a set of ideas at the top and then try to push them down countries. This is going to be bottom up, where the country knows that this is what is needed at this level, and then they pick up the programs and policies that would have worked in a similar context, and then you try and mobilize resources. Now, this is going to be action driven, focused on the how. How do we do this? Like I said, bottom up, country driven, flexible implementation based on a reference basket of policy instruments. The alliance basically represents, this is the most important part of this, of the entire alliance, is that it represents a reference basket of policy instruments. Like I said, the alliance now will have policies from all the countries gathered together, and this knowledge is going to be shared. Now, bottom up, country driven, flexible implementation. Countries can choose for adaptation according to their own choices, and this is going to work on SDG 1 and SDG 2 and SDG 10. What are these three? We'll just see in a second. Now, SDG 1, this is the most important sustainable developmental goal we are supposed to achieve by 2030, is no poverty, end poverty in all its forms. SDG 2 is zero hunger, end hunger and achieve food security and improve nutrition, promote sustainable agriculture. This was SDG number 2. The 10th one is called SDG 10, reduce inequality within and among countries. Now, as we know, in most parts of the world, especially the parts that are developing very quickly, this is actually going in the opposite direction. Instead of inequalities reducing, we are saying that wealth is getting concentrated in the hands of a few people. So, if some country has a particular policy that has worked, rest of us can learn from it and then tailor it to the needs of our countries. Now, the other guiding principles, effective governance. Without effective governance, nothing can be done. So, the alliance aims to ensure that it will be a light, simple and effective governance composed of high-ranking representatives from member countries. This is not going to be another organization which will consume resources and not produce results. So, it's going to be a very lightly run bureaucratic organization. It's not going to be one extremely segmented bureaucratized organization. They want to keep it light. Now, promote development cooperative effectiveness. Thus, alliance seeks to promote country ownership, focus on results, like I said, inclusive partnership, transparency, and mutual accountability. And flexible network operation. At the operational level, Global Alliance strives to facilitate, be a broker or matchmaker upon country request. Like I said, the whole thing is going to be based on the country's needs and the country's request. Nobody is going to impose another set of ideas on another country. Leveraging its multiple partnership and smartly to create a tailored coalition of partners as needed. Okay. Now, the membership. Who are going to be the members of this Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty? The United Nations and its associated bodies, of course, UN member and observer states, and G20 members, because it started off with G20 members already a part of it. Other regional and international intergovernmental organizations, national, regional and international aid and development agencies, national, regional and international developmental banks actually, international funds and other trust funds, then local, national, regional other organizations, philanthropy organizations, and international platforms. What are the key pillars of this alliance? It's based on three basic ideas, like I said, national, knowledge and financial. Now, national coordination of public policies specific to eradicating hunger, knowledge, integration of data and technology for evidence-based solutions. Now, like we have a lot of data, for example, in India, we have a lot of data that comes up every time we have a census or even whenever we implement policies and programs. So, this is kind of not really utilized to the maximum. So, that kind of that could be actually used by a lot of other countries that, okay, if this has worked in India, maybe it will work in other countries too. Now, the other thing is the financial aspect of it. Large-scale resource mobilization is absolutely critical to funding any program. Now, because financial institutions and international financial bodies have started to become a part of this alliance, it might be possible to actually have the resources for tackling this massive problem. Now, what are the strategic commitments? Income distribution, reach 500 million people through income support programs by 2030, provide school meals to at least 150 million children in high hunger regions. Countries like India already have a very well run, strong programs like this, so other countries can learn from us. We have a lot of innovative programs in this, and we have a lot of experience in this. Now, there is financial mobilization, leverage multilateral banks to raise billions for anti-poverty initiatives. The biggest problem for when we talk of poverty and hunger is both one kind of mirrors the other. The absence of resources. Many times you have actually organizations that have resources, want to do something good, but really don't know how to go about it. So that is where this is going to fill a gap. Funding, estimated operational costs are $2 to $3 million annually. Now, this is actually where everything is hinging on. This is not really a very big sum. When you look at the scale and scope of this organization and the ambition of what it wants to achieve, $2 to $3 million annually is actually a very small sum. That's for basically the operational cost of it. No exclusive fund, relies on contribution from members and institutions like FAO, UNICEF and the World Bank. So there's not going to be another set of organizations and their own funding. It doesn't become another one like that. So it's going to basically use other organizations and their funds. Now, technical office, based at the FAO with functional autonomy, it's going to be part of the FAO. In a way, it's going to be attached to the FAO, but it's going to be its own independent organization. It's expected that the headquarters of this alliance will be based in either Brasilia or another global south country. Now, this is how it's going to, this is kind of how this organization intends to work. Now, you have the national pillars, you have the financial support pillar, you have the knowledge pillar, all of this together, and you have a statement of commitment. All of this come together, and the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty will have a policy basket. And now we coordinate all of this together. Now, similarly, operation at the country level, Global Alliance, there will be a board of champions. Now, there will be the knowledge pillar, financial support pillar, national pillar. There will be a support mechanism from the Global Alliance. And then you have the policies that are necessary that are going to be brought together. Now, this is how the governance of the Global Alliance is going to be. It's going to be, entry points will be at the UN, RCS and other national offices. Global Alliance support mechanism would be there. Then you have the national pillar, financial support pillar and knowledge pillar. And summits, there will be summits against hunger and poverty. So this is how this is expected to be run. Now, what are the other features of this Global Alliance Against Hunger? It includes a policy basket with over 50 instruments. There are already about 50 policy instruments for targeted supported in areas like school meals and cash transfers. For example, these are issues where there are already policies available. Support for small stakeholders, family planning, socio-economic inclusion, maternal and early childhood intervention. So these are all the issues that are either part of poverty, they make poverty worse, or when you tackle these problems, you have a better chance of ending poverty and hunger. So we already have about 50 instruments. There is a policy basket of close to 50 instruments which are already there. Now, the alliance, like I said, basically it kind of brings together various policies, countries, and the people with funds, or rather organizations with funds. It brings these three things together and then tries to end poverty and hunger. So this is what it is about, and I hope this was useful. Now let us discuss first phase of One Nation, One Subscription approved. There's been a cabinet decision about this. Let us discuss what is One Nation, One Subscription and how it's going to benefit the country. Now, the Union Cabinet recently approved the release of One Nation, One Subscription scheme for the entire country. Now, what is this? This is a scheme that basically is going to help students of higher education in order to access journals. Now, one of the biggest and one of the most important things when you come to higher education is your access to journals, access to publications, access to research. That's the only way you actually get to know where the discipline you're pursuing actually stands, what are the latest trends in it, what are the latest ideas in it. The only way you get to know is through reading these journals, reading these publications, and reading these research articles. But the problem is, these are split across literally thousands of journals and publications, and accessing them becomes very difficult and expensive. So the country has come up with a plan in order to solve this problem for good for everybody. Let us see what this is. Now, this is a scheme that's going to be there from 2025. What the scheme says is that international research journals will be made available to all students and research organizations, all researchers of India studying in government colleges and universities. A portal has been set up for this scheme, and anybody can register themselves on this any student or researcher can register themselves on this portal, and a total of 30 major international journal publishers have been included in this scheme. So there are 30 major publishers. Publishers are part of this scheme, and InfliBinet will be the portal through which all of this will be done. Now, let us discuss more of this. How many people are going to be benefiting from this? It's expected that about 1.8 crore people will be benefiting from this scheme. 1.8 crore students and researchers across the country will be benefiting from this scheme. Now, one of the biggest advantages when a student goes to study abroad is the access to resources. This scheme actually plugs a massive gap and makes it possible that all of us actually have access to better quality articles, better quality research, better ideas, which means that our own quality of education massively goes up. Now, this will allow young academicians of the country to enhance their own research. More than 13,000 journals and research articles from all major publishers will be allowed. That's a massive number of journals. 13,000 journals will be available for all the students. Now, 6,300 government educational and research institutes and research development laboratories will be benefiting from this. Right now, we are covering 6,300 institutes are going to be covered from this in the first phase. Later on, more will be coming through. Now, how much has been allotted for this? It's approximately 6,000 crores has been allowed initially. 6,000 crores has been allotted for One Nation, One Subscription initiative. Program will basically centralize journal subscriptions. So this also means that instead of each individual college, each individual university, each individual research laboratory having to subscribe separately for this, you just have to go into the portal and you have access to all the journals that you actually need. And the other thing is, in case any educational institute or any university, college, research laboratory, research place wants to get some journal which is not part of this, they are still free to do that. This does not mean that they are banned from using anything else. It's not so. Now, current access to journals in higher educational institutions. Higher educational institutions access journals through 10 library consortia managed through various ministries. So basically, library consortia collaborations among libraries to share resources and meet common needs. The other thing is, like I said, higher education institutions also subscribe to journals independently, supplementing consortium-based access. Now, currently about 2,500 higher education institutions have access to approximately 8,100 journals. 8,100 journals is what people are accessing right now. And this is going to be, from 2025, they'll have access to 13,000. So it's a massive leap in terms of the number of journals they can use. Now, who's going to implement this? How is this going to be done? Let us take a look at that. We have what is called the Anusandhan National Research Foundation, ANRF, which underscores government's commitment to fostering a strong research culture. We'll discuss ANRF in a second. Now, the Union Cabinet has approved the ONOS scheme, granting nationwide access to international research articles and journals. This is what we just said. Now, what is the objective? It aims to streamline and decentralize journal access to all the state and central government HEIs, replacing the currently fragmented system. Like I said, right now, either there are 10 consortia, each of them are trying to negotiate with a particular publisher, negotiate with a particular publishing house or a particular journal, and then they're trying to get the prizes. And everything is fragmented, everybody is probably overpaying for what they need. So that is going to change, and this will go live in January 1st, 2025. Now, what are the key ideas in this? There are going to be 30 international publishers, and HEIs will need to register on the platform to access the journals. And the Information and Library Network Center, INFLI-BINET, is going to be the implementing authority. There are about 6,000 crores that have been set apart for this. The 6,000 crores are for a 3-year period from 2025 to 2027. And a single subscription was negotiated with each publisher for all the institutions. And like I said, institutions can still seek and access other journals which are not covered by this. Now, what is the role of ANRF in this? ANRF, the access and usage of subscription will be regularly monitored by ANRF. And it will also contribute to the expansion of publications by Indian authors in the participating journals. The first phase includes 6,300 HEIs and research institutes, both central and state government institutes. In the second phase, the idea is to include the other HEIs in the country. The third phase is going to be the most interesting one. It will cover the entire country under this. So, the entire education system in the country. By the time we come to phase 3, I think we are going to see a massive revolution in terms of the kind of ideas we have access to. Now, what is Anusandhan National Research Foundation? Now, Anusandhan National Research Foundation was established with the Anusandhan National Research Foundation Act of 2023, which actually has been set up to foster a culture of research and innovation through various universities. So, what this seeks to do is, India's universities, colleges and research institutions and R&D and everything, ANRF will act as an apex body to provide a high level strategic direction to ensure high quality research in all our establishments. Now, earlier we had the Science and Engineering Research Board, which was established by an Act of Parliament in 2008. ANRF has replaced that. The ANRF Act basically did away with this, and now it's run by this one. The ANRF Act is now the one that's in place instead of the Science and Engineering Research Board. Now, this will basically try to forge collaborations between industry, academia and government organizations and research institutions. So, that is what it's trying to do. And areas that it covers, it basically seeks to regulate research and development in the areas of natural sciences, technology, agriculture and health tech. So, basically, this is not for everything. We have to remember that. This is not for all research in the country, but only a few areas: natural sciences, technology, and then we have agriculture, health tech. So, these are the areas which ANRF covers. So, the others are not still covered by AN or are still governed under the older patterns that are still there. But these are kind of, we are kind of looking at the future about where we are going, and that is where these have been brought together. Now, what are the benefits of ONOS scheme? There's going to be a broader access to scholarly resources. It will expand the access of the faculty and students and research to top tier journals. Getting journals is actually very, very difficult once you move away from the major universities. Even in the major universities, access to journals is quite difficult because they all have limited budgets for the libraries, and libraries can only spend so much. They have to spend on their books, they have to spend on the journals, they have to spend on maintenance. So basically what happens is there's a limited budget, which means that you can only buy so many journals, you can only subscribe to so many journals. This completely does away with that problem. Instead of a limited number of journals, now you have like 13,000 journals. And it basically covers all the necessary journals that are required for research. Now, the benefits will be extended to students residing in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, because the knowledge gap, like I said, once you move away from the major universities, say your Jawaharlal University or Delhi University or your IITs and other places like that, the quality of access to resources dramatically falls off, especially in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, and this will reduce that gap. Now, everybody has access to the same resources everywhere. Of course, there are other things that come into play, but at least in terms of access to subscriptions and journals, that has been plugged. Now, elimination of overlapping subscriptions, like I said, it will also reduce expenditure because this is a centralized thing through which we are negotiating. Not everybody has to, buy the same journal separately. It's easier to negotiate a better price. Now, obviously, there is also enhanced bargaining power because we are buying for the entire country. You can get better deals from the major publishing houses. It's going to be data-driven utilization and planning. This is what it's going to impact in that way. And this is going to align with the national goals in terms of ANRF. Now, budget allocation for ONOS, total budget of 6,000 crores has been allotted, like I said. And total of 1.8 crore students will benefit. There's total of 6,000 crores. And what are the salient features? It's an integrated portal for everybody. There's going to be access to journals for everybody. All the international publishers and major publishing houses are going to be part of it. And the total government institutes involved are right now 6,300. Total number of beneficiaries is going to be 1.8 crores. So, to sum up, the ONOS scheme is basically a portal through which everybody in the country, every student, every higher researcher of at least 6,300 higher education institutions will be able to access 13,000 journals and publications. And the government is spending 6,000 crores for this over a period of 3 years. This is the first phase, and there are going to be 2 more phases to this. Let us discuss CAFE norms. This is corporate average fuel economy norms, and this actually is going to impact M1 category of vehicles. The government has come up with a new set of norms. This has been in operation from 2017. Now there are a new set of norms. The second phase of these norms has been brought in. Let us discuss this. Now the center has identified, recently what happened was, there are a few car makers who've been given hefty fines for failing to meet the requirements under CAFE norms. Now, Hyundai, Kia, Mahindra, Honda, and for exceeding the fleet emission levels during the financial year 2022-23, they have been given fines of about 2,800 crores. So, what is this CAFE norms? And how did it come to it that such fines have been levied on people? Now, the penalties, total penalty is estimated to be about 7,300 crores. Hyundai alone has been given 2,800 crores penalty. So, what are CAFE norms? And what are the details of it? Let us understand. And how does this impact What is the government trying to do with this? How is it? Is it something important? Let us understand this. Now, penalties are determined by the number of non-compliant vehicles sold, with fines ranging from 25,000 rupees per vehicle for minor deviations to 50,000 per vehicle for significant non-compliance. And along with a total base fine of 10 lakhs. What are these things? The Bureau of Energy Efficiency in 2017, under the Energy Conservation Act of 2001, tried to regulate the fuel consumption and carbon emission for passenger vehicles. These are called, this is basically called M1. What this is basically, in the country, the vehicles are categorized depending on a variety of factors. This basically we're talking about M1. What is M1? M1 is any vehicle that has 8 seats or less, and most of the time it will be about under 3,500 kgs curb weight. I'll describe what is curb weight later. So this is mostly this is the criteria, 8 seats or less. So this is where all your passenger cars, your SUVs, your small vans like your Innovas and other things, which sometimes, have 8 seats. All of them are covered under this. Now, what is the objective of this CAFE norm? Reduce oil dependency and curb air pollution. And like I said, the vehicles under 3,500 kg, including those powered by petrol, diesel, CNG, hybrid and EVs, all kinds of things are covered by this. Now, if you see the fuel-wise share of vehicles sold in the country, in the previous year alone, you will see petrol is about 76% and diesel is 17.39%, CNG is 6.27%, and pure electrics are a mere 0.19%. Now, these are generally the categories that are categorized in the country based on a set of criteria. And this is basically done by the Ministry of Transport. So you have category A, category C, L1, which means motorcycles, L1, L2, which is again a motorcycle, L3 again is a motorcycle. Now, we have L5M, L5N, then M is where we are mostly talking about. We are talking about this category M1. We're talking about this category M1, which is basically a vehicle that has less than 8 seats or less, and weighs less than 3,500 kgs. Now, we also have categories for carriage of goods, for trailers. So, those are not covered by this. Now, the government is considering advancing the deadline for manufacturers to switch over to electric vehicles. The initial idea was that 2030 would be when vehicles could be shifted over to. The idea was that by 2030 was the deadline for switching to electric vehicles, but looks like we're not really there. But the government is still pushing manufacturers to shift into electric vehicles so that pollution can be drastically reduced in the country. Now, manufacturers are obviously opposing. So, what the government is doing is, the government is trying to achieve cleaner air through stricter CAFE norms instead, which is basically corporate average fuel emissions or fuel economy. Now, what we have to understand is, this is not based on the fuel efficiency of a single car. There's a slightly complex calculation for this. It's basically based on all the number of cars, which is where the idea was fleet emissions. All the cars in a particular category plus all the cars in a particular other category, all of them together by their curb weights and other things is how we reach at CAFE norms emissions. Now, what are the CAFE norms? It aims to lower fuel consumption and improving fuel efficiency. It is achieved by lowering carbon dioxide emissions. Now, remember, the focus of CAFE norms is on CO2 basically. Rest of it is covered under BS norms. So, you have Bharat Stage 1, Bharat Stage 2. Bharat Stage emissions cover the other things. CO2 is basically covered under CAFE. Okay. This is not under this. Now, so it serves two purposes: reduces dependence on oil for fuel and controls pollution. So basically, there are two goals that are achieved through this. It refers to, basically, whenever we say corporate average, refers to the sales volume weighted average for automobiles. It's like the total sales of cars. This is what we look at. Sorry, this is what we look at when we talk about CAFE norms and CAFE norms not being met. It's a total sales of cars by a manufacturer. So this is what is necessary to remember. It's not based on a single car's mileage, but based on the total cars and their curb weights. Now, in many advanced countries also you have the same thing. In India, we have this in place from 2017. The first stage, like we had CAFE 1, CAFE phase 1, and now we have entered phase 2. Phase 2, okay. Now, under phase 1, CO2 emissions had to be 130 grams per kilometer. This was in effect till 2022. So, 130 grams per kilometer. Now, under CAFE 2, it's 113 grams per kilometer. Or what we are saying is the cars need to be 10% more efficient over a period of 5 years. So, every 5 years we are shifting the goalpost a little, so that the manufacturers have enough time to upgrade the technology and meet the needs of the country. Why is it important to India? Basically, what will happen is global automakers are attracted to make the investments in the country because the penetration of vehicles is still low in India compared to other markets, and we are a massive market. And the pollution caused by ever increasing vehicles has actually damaged the air quality in many cities. I mean, come winter, we always hear of how bad the air is in cities like Delhi, cities in the north, and generally we hear of very poor air quality in most of the cities. So what we always talk of AQI quality, that can't be controlled if we don't reduce our carbon emissions. Now, upgrading to stricter fuel standards is one way. We are doing that already. In this context, CAFE norms basically assume importance, because what we are saying now is the fuel is going to be improved, fuel quality is going to be improved. Similarly, the kind of the amount of fuel used by a car, and subsequently the amount of CO2 that comes out of the car per kilometer must also go down. So this is how this problem is being tackled. Now, stricter CAFE targets, the idea is that will push car manufacturers into moving towards electric or strong hybrid vehicles. Mostly we have light hybrids in the country. A few cars are hybrids, but the idea is that we push the car manufacturers towards strong hybrids and electric vehicles to the extent possible. Now, idea is that this will complement other efforts over a period of time. For example, we have the BS6 norm emissions from 2020 onwards. Now, the next set is going to come soon enough. We also have the faster adoption in manufacturing a hybrid and electric vehicle scheme, which is called the FAME. And like I said, CAFE focuses on CO2 emissions, BS6 focuses on other harmful emissions coming out of the exhaust. What does India's policy specify? The draft national policy, basically given in early 2018, calls for developing a very clear set of CO2 regulations through CAFE regulations. Now, basically the idea is that we'll match the same set of regulations set up by the other developed countries. Also, the policy also envisaged that there would be penalties in case these norms are not met by manufacturers, and that is what has been done finally. So this was in 2018. The country told very clearly that you have to meet CAFE norms. If you don't meet these emission norms, if you don't meet these economy norms, you are going to be penalized, and that is what the country has done now. And there is another important aspect of this. The policies in 2018 also envisaged a situation there would be credits given for achieving more than the mandated fuel norms. If a company exceeded that, they would be given to the company as credits. Those could be banked and traded. So these are also called super credits. And this again was part of the idea in 2018. So things have been set up well in advance. What are super credits? Now, super credits, manufacturers of passenger cars are allowed to, basically, if a specific model is actually far exceeding the norms set up for that particular category, the excess that has been created by that particular car is counted as a credit, which can then be used by the company for other. They can either maybe there's another car that is not really that good. They can either buy back for that car, or they could use it for some other purpose. So these are what are called super credits. For example, if you have electric vehicles, there's almost no emission, no CO2 coming out of them. Or if you have hybrids, their emissions are very low. So what happens in that case is you get credits. Suppose it is 113 and your car is basically at 20 grams per kilometer, then obviously you are getting the excess. So that excess credits you can use probably for another car which is actually polluting, and that helps the company and it helps the country as well. So this is how it works. Now, 98% of the CO2 emissions are basically taken as when we count the credits, it's about 98% of the value is basically on CO2. So basically how this is done is, first the sales data for M1 category of vehicles is collected. Calculation of weighted average fuel consumption is done per liter. How many kilometers, per 100 kilometers, how many liters of fuel is being used? And how much of CO2 emission is coming out of that. So these two are calculated. And then calculation of fuel saving with respect to baseline fuel consumption and emission reductions is being done. So this is how it is done. Now, standards, like I said, were introduced in two phases, effectively 2017-18, and then second phase has been in place from 2022 and 23. Now, fuel, what are the compliance criteria for the current norms? Let us consider that. It's basically 4.78 liters per 100 kilometers for category M1 vehicles and 113 grams of CO2 per kilometer. So these are the two things that a car manufacturer must meet. Now there are also penalties, like I said, and incentivizes auto manufacturers to produce EVs and hybrids. So this is what you need to remember. It's 4.78 liters per every 100 kilometers. You are probably allowed to use about 4.78 liters of fuel. And you're allowed to emit about 113 grams of CO2 per kilometer. Now, like I said, one of the things I wanted to tell you was about curb weight. What is curb weight? Curb weight is the weight of a car. This includes a full fuel tank of fuel and all standard equipment. It does not include the weight of any passengers, cargo, or other non-standard equipment. And generally, we take curb weight as one of the factors while calculating CAFE norms. Very quickly, how is I'm not going to go into major details about how to calculate the CAFE norms and how the averages are divided, but I'll just quickly tell you. So we just take into account the number of cars sold in a particular model into the weight of curb model of that particular car, curb weight of that car. Then you add the number of cars sold in the second model into the curb weight, and so on and so forth. Then you divide by the total number of cars sold in that company. Then you get the first target. Then you get, it's a slightly complex calculation. At the end of it, what you want is, ultimately you want the number to be lower than 113 for the company. That's what it's all about. It has to be less than 113 for the company. Now, this is how the world is right now. World stands, where is the world right in terms of emission standards? Where we are targeting is in CAFE 3, we are saying that it's going to be 91.7 grams CO2 per kilometer. And cafe 4, we are saying that it's going to be 70 grams of CO2 per kilometer. So it's always 5 years, 5 years, 5 years. That's the way it works. Now it's applicable to the entire fleet, and they can limit. One of the things they can do is they can limit the emissions by reducing the sales of cars in categories which are actually not fuel efficient, which actually emit a lot. They can always increase the number of sales in cars that are meeting the criteria, or they're actually better than the criteria, and then they can actually save themselves. So they can actually get even credits out of that. So that's what it is. Now, what are CAFE 3 and CAFE 4 quickly? CAFE 3, like I said, the targets are 91.7. CAFE 4 is 70. Currently, it's 113. And the way to test it is called the Modified Indian Driving Cycle. And it basically aligns with global standards. Now, if you look at the world where it is, EU right now is already following 95 grams per CO2. 95 grams of CO2 per kilometer. And the US from 2024-26 is going to be about 58 grams of CO2 per kilometer. So the technology is already there. The manufacturers don't have to create and invent new technology for the sake of our country. They can actually use the technology that's available in these countries, and they can sell the cars. There's also an idea called derogation factor. This is how it's used for basically calculating CAFE norms. And if you see this word, remember it is linked to basically CAFE norms. So what are the SDGs impacted by this? You have affordable and clean energy. That's SDG 7 that's impacted by this. You have 12, responsible consumption. You have innovation in infrastructure, SDG 9. You have 13, climate action. And you have sustainable cities and communities, SDG 11, and partnerships for the goals, that is SDG 7. So this was about CAFE norms, and I hope we had a deep enough discussion. Let us discuss PM Vidya Lakshmi scheme. This is a new scheme that has been launched by the government. Let us find out what this scheme is about, and let us get the details of this. Now, there's a new central scheme that has been set up. It's called the PM Vidya Lakshmi scheme. It basically tries to provide financial help to meritorious students in the form of loans. It so happens that many times students get into good colleges and good universities, and they're not able to afford the fees there, or they're not able to take care of their financial needs for that education period, and they drop out of education. So now the government has launched a scheme through which students can actually get loans for taking care of their educational needs. Now, this scheme is rooted in the National Education Policy of 2020, which talks about financial assistance for students, and it covers both private and public higher education institutions. Now, objective is basically to ensure financial inclusion in education, which is to say that everybody, irrespective of their financial status, must be able to get a good education, as long as if they are intellectually capable of getting an education. Financial means should not become a reason why they don't get education. So basically, that is the prime objective. Now, the idea is to support top educational institutions, provide transparent and digital access to loans and other financial needs. Now, this scheme was recently launched and by the Prime Minister, and it's basically going to impact about 22 lakh school students. The idea, the estimates is that it's going to help about 22 lakh students every year under the scheme. Any student who's accepted in a quality higher education institute can apply for this. Now, the focus is on a few things. One is the target is going to be at least 22 lakh students will be benefiting from that, and meritorious students, but only when they get into quality higher educations and not into any and every place where they end up with a useless degree and a financial loan. So the government doesn't want that. Only when the institutes are going to be identified, and we already have the NRF ratings, the national ratings rankings framework is already in place for all the universities and colleges. So only the top rated ones would be eligible for this, and a student who's getting into only good colleges and good universities would be eligible for this. Now, what is the objective? The objective is that the students who want to pursue higher education but cannot due to financial problems would be able to get an education. Now, what the government is saying is that 75% credit guarantee will be provided by the government. Now, these are important things. 75% of the credit guarantee will be provided by the government for a loan of 7.5 lakh rupees, and for students whose annual income will be 8 lakhs. And all of them will be given 3% interest discount on take a loan of up to 10 lakhs. So, this is the crux of it. So, there is going to be 7.5 lakhs and there is going to be an interest discount of 3%. Now, basically it is going to benefit the needy students, financially needy students in need of financial help. It is going to help them, and the government is standing as a credit guarantor for this, because many times it's possible that students apply for a loan but they don't get it because there's no way they can, when somebody applies for a loan, they have to actually show some kind of an asset. So, the government is saying that 75% of the loan we are going to be the guarantor. How is it different from the past schemes? Now, this covers middle income families. Unlike the earlier schemes which are limited for caste groups, and earlier we had schemes that would be either based on specific caste criteria or low income groups. This basically covers middle income families. So, it's not only for low income and caste groups, it's going to cover everybody. It's going to cover a much larger group of people because of this. Now, the other thing is the loan process is going to be very simple, and it also allows the students to basically track the process of their loan, whether it is been approved, is it under consideration, has it been rejected. So, that is going to be possible. Students can apply through the Vidya Lakshmi portal, which links major public and private banks. And basically, there's already a Vidya Lakshmi portal, and the student can apply for 3 banks at the same time. Simultaneously, the student is allowed to apply for 3 banks, maximum of 3 banks. Now, the focus is going to be on NIRF rankings. Like I said, eligibility is strictly restricted to institutions ranked in the top 100 of the NIRF, either overall or in a category or in domain specific lists. So, only top rated institutes and only students getting into top rated institutes are eligible for this scheme. Now, it is a first of its kind portal that basically is going to help students a lot. It's the first of its kind portal for students seeking an educational loan, and this has been developed by the Department of Higher Education, Ministry of Education, Department of Financial Services of the Ministry of Finance, and the Indian Banks Association. So, all these have come together and developed this portal, and it's being maintained by Protean e-governance technologies. Please remember these things. This is the kind of things that end up in prelims and all. So, Protean e-governance technology is going to be the one that maintains, it has developed by them, and they are going to take care of this. Now, students are going to have what is called a common education loan application form, and this common education loan application form is a single form which a student can apply to multiple banks. So, it's earlier a student would have to apply specific, there'd be specific applications for each bank, and then you run around the banks, and then you don't know whether it's getting approved, rejected, nothing. You don't know anything. People would be actually quite unsure about where they stood. Now, the idea is that there is a common education application, and either it's accepted or rejected, students would know well in advance. Now, students can apply through Vidya Lakshmi portal, and like I said, there's a maximum of 3 banks you can apply to at any given point of time. What are the features of the portal? Provides a single window portal for all the students, for all the government. It also gives you information about other scholarships and other things. It's not only for loans, it also will tell you about what kind of other financial support is available. That's also being provided through this. So, it's a single window for access point for information and not only just loans. So that is one thing. So there will be information about education loan schemes. There will be obviously common education loan application form. You can apply to multiple banks, like I said, 3 at the same time. There is a facility for banks to download student loan applications and facility for banks to upload loan processing status. So even the banks will obviously have to work on this. I mean, it's a portal where both sides of the application process is being catered to. One, the students can put in the application, and the banks can also continuously access it and work on it right there. Now, there is also a facility for students to email grievance and queries to about loans to banks. And like I said, the most interesting thing is it also links, provides a linkage to National Scholarship Portal for information and application for government scholarships. So this is going to serve two purposes. One, you have loans and scholarships. So this single portal, PM Vidya Lakshmi portal, is going to basically take care of two sides. Suppose somebody is eligible for a scholarship, they may not need a loan, or maybe if your loan is not, your scholarship is not adequate enough, then you can maybe take a part loan. So that's how this is going to work. So what are the features? Eligibility: any students who secures admission in a high quality quality higher education institution. The loan terms: collateral free and guarantor free, because the government is standing as the guarantor. You don't need another set of guarantors. Now, there are institutional coverage. Only the top 100 institutions are going to be covered. Now, initial phase 860 high quality educational institutes are going to be there. This is going to benefit about 22 lakh students. And for loans of 7.5 lakhs, 75% credit guarantee is going to be given by the government. Eligibility: students with a family income of 8 lakhs and not benefiting from any other government scholarship or interest subvention schemes. Subsidy terms: 3% is going to be the discount that's going to be given to the students. And beneficiary priority: preference is given to students in government institutions and technical and professional courses. So that's how it stands right now. So this was launched on 6 November 2024. Provide education loans and provide loans for further education. And the total financial commitment right now is 3,600 crores. And the whole process is going to be online. What are the challenges faced by this program? Reduce institutional coverage. Like I said, only 100 institutes are covered. So that also is a problem. Now, performance stakes: with eligibility tied to rankings, students have to perform exceptionally well because 100 institutes are not a lot. Now, exclusion of risks: students in non-NIRF ranked institutions obviously face higher interest loans or loan rejection. If you're not getting into the top 100, banks and financial institutions might actually exploit the situation. Now, institutional competition, that is other problem. Rankings become crucial, incentivizing higher rankings by NIRF, but that's a two-edged sword. I know it also means that the institutes now have to work harder and have to improve the quality of education they are providing. So this was about Vidya Lakshmi. This is a unique scheme, and actually it should help the students a lot in the years to come. And also it means that now institutes have to work, higher education institutes have to work and improve their own ranking, so that the students who are applying in their places can be even eligible to apply for the loan. If you're not in the top 100, you're not eligible to, your students are not even eligible for applying for these loans. But the best part of it is the government is standing as a guarantor, and there is a discount on the interest rates being offered of 3% standard of whatever the interest rate is at that point of time. You're going to get a 3% discount on that. Let us discuss resolving the issue of overcrowded prisons in India. Now, this is a well-known fact that the country's prisons are extremely crowded, far beyond their capacity, and this is a massive problem because we're basically stuffing people into small cells everywhere in the country. And how to resolve this? There have been some good ideas recently, and the Supreme Court has come out with a research publication on this. So we'll be discussing that. And just as a pointer, 78% of the prisoners in the country, they are under trials, which is to say 78% are not yet guilty. They've only been accused of crimes. So only 22% are basically criminals. Now, this is a publication called the Report on Prisons in India, Mapping Prison Manuals and Measures for Reformation and Decongestion. This was published by the Center for Research and Planning, Supreme Court of India, and we'll discuss this. So, this was recently released, so let us discuss this. The Indian prison system faces acute challenges, and one of the suggestions that has come from the Supreme Court is using electronic tracking devices. Now, this is being used across the world, but India has never done this. In using electronic tracking devices to address this issue. So, what can be done is you put an electronic tracker on somebody and say that this person is going to, you give the person bail and say they are now going to be given house arrest. So, the person cannot leave a defined perimeter. Now, that is a way of making sure the person doesn't go here and there, and you can then start to give more people that kind of conditional bail, and then you can reduce the congestion in the prison. So, this is the crux of what has been suggested by the Supreme Court. Now, it was recently released by the President of India, the report. What it suggests is a phased implementation of electronic monitoring for under trial prisoners to ease prison overcrowding. They are suggesting that in a phased manner, let us see how this goes. This is already being done in the developed world. Let us see if this works. Now, initial phases, target will be low and moderate risk under trial prisoners, people who are not committed of grievous massive crimes. Now, the most important thing in our country is Supreme Court has always held the position that bail is a right. Jail should happen only if you don't get a bail, but in spite of that, 78% of people are basically under trials, which means that technically these people should have been given bail, but one way of ensuring it is that we are trying to make sure that that happens. So, this is what it is. You have electronic monitoring devices for low risk prisoners initially, and then we will also, the idea is that we will assess community readiness and the feasibility of electronic tracking devices for broader usage. What are the issues involved in this? When we talk of this, what are the issues involved? Now, what is a legislative framework in our own country? Does it support it? Does it go against it? Let us understand that. Now, what the current legal position is that we have the Model Prisons and Correctional Services Act 2023. This already introduced the idea of electronic tracking devices. So, we put in place in 2023 an act that says that electronic tracking devices can be used. Now, the Law Commission of 2017 recognized the cost saving and security benefits of electronic tagging while emphasizing caution. Now, one of the bigger problems is there is also a question of data privacy. If you're continuously 24 hours, the idea is that you're monitoring somebody's movements 24 hours. Now, that also raises questions of data usage, it raises questions of privacy and the data that's coming out of that. How are you going to use that? Who is going to have access to that? There are other issues involved. Now, courts have imposed location tracking as bail condition in select cases already. Now, there are a few sections which allow this to happen. Let us, like I said, we'll first discuss what legal positions allow. One, we already, like I said, Model Prison Correctional Services Act allows this. So, this is in favor. Then 2017 report of the Law Commission of India also allows this. There have been judicial positions. Courts have imposed location tracking as a bail condition. Now, the courts under the earlier IPC, section 437 and 439, sorry, and 439 of IPC, the courts had the right to impose conditions they seem necessary for giving bail. So, this is again covered under that. Now, because now we are under BNSS, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita of 2000, Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita. of 2023. This would be section 482 and 483. It's basically a replica of the earlier sections, but only the numbers have changed. So basically, it's more or less covers the same position legally. Now, the Supreme Court recently said that they have disapproved of constant surveillance. They have not agreed to the idea of constant surveillance of people, underscoring the need for clear guidelines to maintain balanced security and privacy. So, this is what is actually standing against it. We basically have to find a balance for this. It's not that somebody is a prisoner, so they've lost all rights as individuals. It doesn't work that way. Or we are saying that, okay, the person would be in prison, so what difference it makes? No, even in prison, they're allowed a certain amount of privacy as human beings. But the moment you put a tag on somebody, are we violating that position? Are we violating that essential aspect of human beings that, you are allowed a life? Even in prison, you're allowed a certain life. Now, what are the benefits of the electronic tracking devices? It leads to prison decongestion. It's cost effective. There are mental health benefits to the prisoners. Then there are rehabilitation incentives, encourages good conduct by linking it with parole or furlough. These are two different ideas. We'll discuss that. What are the concerns and what are the safeguards for electronic tracking devices? Could lead to misuse, infringing on civil liberties, potential operational challenges. We have never tried it in the country. We really don't know how it works, but that doesn't mean that we never try it. Now, what are the recommendations for ethical use? There should be clear guidelines about who has access to this data, who has access to monitoring the person and things like that. Now, there should be strict safeguards to ensure that there is no misuse of this. Now, prison overcrowding is a serious problem in the country where most of the prisons are at 131.4%. And this has basically led to ideas about how to actually tackle this problem. And this is one of the ideas. This is a recent proposal, like I said. And why is this idea being considered? If you look at it in terms of numbers, we get a clearer picture. 5.7 lakh prisoners, and there's only enough space for 4.3 lakh of them. So that's a massive number. So basically, we don't have space for about 1.4 lakh people who are in prisons. And electronic devices is one way of doing this. This would definitely ease the overcrowding problem. Now, what are the global practices when we talk of using electronic devices? Countries that use electronic devices, United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Malaysia, Australia, they already use electronic tracking devices. Now, the purpose is to alleviate prison congestion and reduce overcrowding. And the method is there's generally an ankle tag that monitors, that is attached to an offender, and outside the prison, when they are often under parole or probation or on a furlough, you attach it to the person. Now, like I said, we already have the Model Prisons Act and the Law Commission report. And what are the previous examples? Odisha has already tried this. Odisha was the first state in the country. This is something you should remember. And this was done for under trials who were accused of less serious crimes. And the idea was to ensure that we are reducing the overcrowding while still keeping an eye on the people and restricting their movements. Now, what are the benefits of this system? Prison decongestion, reduces inmate numbers, it's cost effective, mental health benefits. Suicide is more common in prisons than you would know. There are very serious mental disorders that are happening in prisons. I mean, we've had probably discussions about this in the past. Now, reduces isolation, which is a common issue in prison, can lead to better mental health outcomes. Then it improves family contact. That also ensures that the person actually becomes a better person, and there is also a rehabilitation incentive. What are the challenges? Tracking a person's location continuously raises very serious privacy issues. Supreme Court has rejected bail condition that required location sharing through Google Maps. This has already happened. Electronic tracking raises similar privacy concerns. Now, the idea is to respect privacy but have clear guidelines. Right now, we don't have any clear guidelines. So, first, we may have to establish those clear guidelines. Now, there is resistance from some prisoners who may say that, wearing this is not comfortable, or I don't want to be watched all the time. So, that could happen. They should obviously, voluntary consent is needed for this, and wearing the device is voluntary, and consider prisoners' own mental aspects to this. Now, when we talk of prisons, like I said, one thing I want you to understand, the difference between parole and furlough, because this concept is used when we talk of overcrowding of prisons. Now, both parole is conditional release based on good behavior. Furlough is brief release for long-term imprisonment, and the biggest difference is it's for a specific, both are for a specific purpose. But in the case of parole, the time served outside prison does not count into the prison sentence. Suppose somebody is sentenced for 20 years and they spent a month on parole. That parole period must be served later. But in the case of furlough, the 1 month that they spend outside the prison is still considered part of the prison sentence. So that is the biggest difference. Now, in the case of India, parole is granted by the Divisional Commissioner. Furlough is granted by the Deputy Inspector General of Prisons. Now, parole in India is maximum up to 1 month. Furlough is for a maximum of 14 days. Now, what the data shows is, there are a total of about 5,73,220 prisoners. About 4,34,000 of them are under trials. 75.8%, actually it's about 78% of them are under trials. Now, close to 60% under trials are in just 6 states: Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and Punjab and West Bengal. And 65% of under trials are illiterate or studied maximum of up to class 10. 19.3% of under trials are Muslims. 4.7% are Sikh, which is actually more than the percentage of those people if you look at it in terms of the country's population. So this is a pattern that occurs across the world. It's not unique to us. For example, the number of black prisoners in the United States is far higher than their actual population in terms of percentages. Now, 20.9% were SCs, 9.3% were STs. If you look at it, only 16.6% of the population in the country is scheduled caste, and 8.6% of population is scheduled tribe in the country. So even those categories are more in prisons as compared to their population in terms of percentages. Now, 40.7% is the increase in the number of under trials since independence, since 2017. What are the biggest causes of prison overcrowding? Inadequate infrastructure, lengthy period of pre-trial, strict sentencing practices without the provision for fine and community. And before we beat down on the courts, we need to understand a simple thing. In terms of judges per million, India has 21 judges, judges per million. United States is 274. China has about 300. So this has to change. The percentage of judges first has to be corrected. You need more judges. You have a population that's growing massively. We are about 1.5 billion people. So till this changes, not much can be effectively changed on the ground. Now, what are the reforms related to India's under-trial prisoners? There have been Supreme Court directives, there have been special drives, there have been fast-track courts, there has been legal aid and representation, there have been policy reforms, there have been bail law reforms, there have been judicial and administrative efficiency issues. So, this is what it is about prison overcrowding, and basically the idea is that we understand and find a way of reducing overcrowding and also not treating those accused as actually guilty. Because if somebody is already in prison, in a way you're considering that they're guilty. So that is the other thing. Now, there have been questions on this issue earlier. Let us look at the previous year questions. There was a mains question: discuss the challenges faced by Indian prison system and propose measures for its effective reform. Instance of president's delay in commuting death sentences has come under public debate as denial of justice. Should there be a time specified for the president to accept or reject such petitions? This was in 2014. And the National Human Rights Commission in India can be most effective when its tasks are adequately supported by other mechanisms that ensure the accountability of a government. In light of the above observation, assess the role of NHRs as an effective complement to the judiciary and other institutions in promoting and protecting human rights standards in 2014. So these are the two questions that appeared earlier. So there have been questions on this issue, and it's a fairly important issue, and be aware of it and be aware of the various aspects. I think we have covered enough of that today. Now, let us discuss Jeevan Praman Digital Life Certificate for Pensioners. This is a new initiative by the government. Let us discuss what this is, and let us try and understand the various aspects of this. Now, it is a biometric enabled digital service. Whenever a person retires from work and they have to start getting their pensions, they have to provide proof of being alive. And this is generally done by giving a certificate to whoever is actually granting the pension. And this becomes a pretty cumbersome exercise, and as people age, it gets difficult and more difficult for them to actually go and present themselves along with a certificate. First, they have to get a certificate, they have to get the certificate from the authority who is allowed to give it, then they have to physically go, then they have to have it done. So this actually can be eased up, this can be made much more easier, which is what Jeevan Praman is about. It's now a biometric enabled digital service for pensioners. So the government has come up with a new plan. Basically, you'll have a biometric enabled digital service for pensioners. This will cover central government, state government, or any other government organization can benefit from this facility. Now, one of the major prerequisites for pension, like I said, is that they provide life certificates. So the life certificates are going to be now digital. Now, how is this being done? What is this new scheme? How will it help people? Let us see this. Now, more than 1 crore families in India are basically classified as pensioners, and this can benefit all those families. Now, if we see how does Jeevan Praman work, Jeevan Praman involves an Aadhaar card based on biometric authentication. So basically what people are going to do is they can upload their data, link it to Jeevan Praman, and then their proof of being alive can be just done through their iris or their fingerprint. And then the respective, then they get a certificate that says that, this person is, the life certificate is generated, digital life certificate, what is called a DLC, will be generated, and then either your pension issuing authority can access that. So this is the crux of it. Now let us discuss how this works in detail. Now it involves Aadhaar-based biometric authentication. Remember, when we are getting our Aadhaar certificates done, Aadhaar cards done, we give our fingerprints of all the 10 fingers and we give iris. So this biometric data is already available and only a live person can give this. So that is basically the crux of it. Now, on successful authentication, a live certificate gets generated and it is stored in the live certificate repository. This is the Jeevan Praman, the way it works. The pension dispersing agency can access such certificates online anytime. You don't have to go and actually give it in person. Now, first stage is live certificate generation. Pensioner can visit the nearest Jeevan Praman center. Now, Jeevan Praman centers have been set up as well. Download the PC mobile application and they can register and do it. They can do it themselves. Now, this is going to be done in 3 different ways. Let us look at the 3 different ways. Now, first, let us see how this whole system works, then how it is being executed. Okay. Now, first we have the live certificate generation. Once a person can establish online that the person is alive, a life certificate is generated which can be accessed by the pensioners. Now, the second thing is it's based on Aadhaar authentication. So basically fingerprint or iris. Now there is a life certificate, like I said. Successful authentication, you will receive an SMS and other things. Now people also can access their certificates, and there is also an electronic delivery of the certificates available. You can download it. Now who issues the Jeevan Praman Patra or DLC? The following, these people, the digital life certificate can be given by various citizen service centers that are located across the country. There is an office of pension disbursing agencies such as post office, banks, treasury. They'll be authorized to give this. Then the pensioners themselves can generate the certificate on a Windows PC or a laptop or through any Android mobile phone. So this is how, these are the three ways in which a Jeevan Praman Patra or a digital life certificate can be generated. You can go and get it from one of the centers that are authorized to give it. You can download it yourself, or you can just use your phone to actually do this. Now, what are the benefits of this? Benefit is that it replaces the painful and manual process of actually having to go and do all this. And since biometric is based on a person's Aadhaar card, there is a very, very low risk of being misused. On submission of the DLC, the pension is credited to the person. Now, most important thing, Income Tax Act recognizes digital life certificates. So this is already covered by the law. Now, how to register? Now, the person can generate a certificate by visiting the Praman Center, or they can submit the same certificates. They need to authenticate their biometric data. Now, how can they submit it? There is also a provision for doorstep banking. Now, if we see, many of the elderly people are not particularly comfortable with doing transactions online, either in terms of getting their pensions or actually doing all these things. There's a certain amount of digital hesitancy, not digital illiteracy, but digital hesitancy. And then again, there is a divide. There's a real digital divide in the country. Once you go away from the metros and other places, it gets increasingly difficult for people to actually use these things because they're unaware of it. So there is also an option for doorstep banking. So they can actually select the bank, ask for doorstep request, then the bank will send, and they can provide the pension account number and verify the same. They will be given charged a doorstep fee, and upon the payment of that fee, a bank agent will actually come to their home, help them to do this digitally. So this part of it is actually, I think, the best part of this, that we have people who will actually go and help senior citizens do this digitally, and it's not that, okay, if you can't do it, you're excluded from the system. So that is actually a brilliant part of it. Now, who are the pensioners who are covered by this? Government, defense, railway personnel, PSUs, education institutions, they all have to give it annually in November to continue receiving the pensions, like I said. Now, the Department of Pension and Pensions Welfare ran a third DLC campaign recently with 1900 camps to assess pensioners to basically complete this process and also to actually familiarize with them about how they can do it digitally. The nodal ministry for this is going to be the Ministry of Personal, Public Grievances and Pensions through the Department of Pension and Pension Welfare. The features of this program are going to be digital access, there's a wide reach, and there are going to be campaigns to cover all this. Now, what are the challenges? Like I said, the biggest challenge is the digital divide. This other thing is there can be technical glitches. Every time you use a phone or you try to use any app, you've seen this. Now, there is a lack of awareness. Most people are still not aware that digital life certificates can be generated and can be submitted, and they really don't have to go physically every time. And what are the number of pensioners in the country? There are 64.88 crore central government pensioners as of March 31st, 2024. It's a very large number. This includes 10.09 lakh civilian pensioners, 31.92 lakh defense pensioners, 15.25 lakh railway pensioners, and 4.56 lakh telecom pensioners, and 3.04 lakh postal pensioners. This is only the central government we're talking about, and there are state government employees as well. Jeevan Praman numbers, during the last year DLC campaign, 1.47 crore certificates were generated, including 45.46 lakh from central government pensioners. So there's a long way to go. If you see almost 65 crores versus 1.5 crores. Now, generation of the DLC, like I've said, the Jeevan Praman uses Aadhaar for biometric. Faith's authentication was introduced in 2021. Now, there were camps being held in 800 cities. Like I said, 1900 camps were held. So, pensioners in India as of now, the numbers we just discussed. And what are the authentication methods? Like I said, Jeevan Praman model uses basically the Aadhaar card, and generated DLC pensions need a linked Aadhaar card. I mean, these things are already in place. Now, there have been campaigns and participation. Camps were held in 800 cities. What are the campaign takeaways? Face authentication. In the first 11 days of the campaign, 31% of the people opted for face authentication, significantly less than 20%, significant increase from 20% last year. DLC generation, 63% of the people did DLC using fingerprints. And age-wise distribution, 45% of DLCs were generated for pensions aged 60 to 70, 28% for those between. So please remember this fact: 60 to 70, 45%, and about 28%, 70 to 80 years, and 21% for those below age. Now, highest number of DLCs were generated in Maharashtra, followed by Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, and Karnataka. Generally, if you see the patterns, these are the states that are slightly better developed than the other states, and people are generally a little more aware here. Now, what the campaign has been quite successful, so to say, and just to conclude, the central government pensions as of March 31st, 2023, these are the numbers, and these are actually pretty large numbers. And this particular government program of Jeevan Praman is actually going to be massively beneficial if it can be implemented across the country, because it's quite difficult for pensioners who already have age-related health problems and other health problems most of the time. And as we grow older, we have more health issues, and they have mobility issues as well. It would massively help them. And the aspect of this program where you have the option of asking a banking agent to come and help you finish this process at home actually completely changes the way this program can be carried out. And if it is carried out, it will actually help the country massively. Right now, campaigns are being held. The third campaign was held recently, and this should help the pensioners in the country. I hope these discussions were useful, and the very best for your preparation. And we'll meet again in the next episode, where we'll be discussing the social issues as they come up. Best of luck for your preparation, and all the very best.